Good evening, and welcome to Poketunes, the show where we cover every single piece of music from the Pokemon series. This week we're talking about Route 23. I'm just kidding. Poketunes is not coming back, at least anytime soon. But I am analyzing Route 23 today, and for all you Poketunes fans, I hope this suffices for now. I will be covering more Pokemon stuff in the future, but at least this is good enough for today. So here's Route 23 by Go Ichinose. Go Ichinose is the most prolific Pokemon composer. I mean, Masuda is famous for writing the battle themes and stuff like that, but Ichinose writes pretty much all of the best music in the franchise. He's the most literate musically, and he just has such an incredible breadth of knowledge about harmony, and that's what makes his pieces the most interesting to cover, and it's why we're covering Route 23 today. So take a look at this chart. We immediately start out with blue, red, red, red. So there is no rest at the beginning of the piece. There's no tonic function chord. It's all just motion, 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 motion. Right? There is no rest. Absolutely no rest at all during that whole section. And then we finally resolve this predominant-dominant chain to this tonic function chord. So I mentioned predominant-dominant chains. We talked about predominant-dominant chains a long time ago. I think it was it wasn't in the Zelda video. I don't remember which one it was in. But this is a very, very textbook example of a predominant-dominant chain. See these four chords at the top? 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7. When you see 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7, or anything like it, if you see 2, 3, 4, 5, or flat 6, flat 7, flat 1, flat 2, any of those sorts of patterns moving upwards, likely you have a predominant-dominant chain. This one, when it reaches flat 7, it goes to 5, 7 before resolving. Sometimes you can have an additional chord, kind of like an additional dominant function chord to kind of end off your chain, right? But this is just a standard predominant-dominant chain. And it resolves at this section, which is a absolutely wonderful example of a lament. So I'm going to play that intro again and then go into this section. Right? Then look at how fast that moves. You end up in this crazy key super far away, faster than you could even keep track of what's going on here. So let me break it down a little bit. This first lament has these descending thirds. Which is so somber. It's such a somber little device. And then we get a sort of uplifting chromatic motion. And this really cool altered dominant chord. Listen to that. And then we get kind of a sweeter lament, right? So on the second lament, which is shown here, is kind of a sweeter lament, Right, so the first time we had this somber, sort of dark sounding lament. The second time we have this. And then it resolves to a really bright, surprising bright key. Right? So, the difference here right, is that this second chain really kind of emphasizes this tonal motion towards a major 4/6, right? This almost feels like it's like this 6/2 diminished 7, almost not even a 4/6. But the second time, we really hear the sweetness of that 4/6. Right? And it really comes out of the texture. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful little section. And then right after that, in order to transition to the next section, he introduces a new predominant-dominant chain. In this case, this one is not a typical predominant-dominant chain. It is a predominant-dominant chain with skipping at the beginning of the chain. What skipping means is that instead of going, instead of going up the octatonic scale the whole time, instead of going up in the bass, whole step, half step, whole step, half step, instead of doing that, there's like a perfect fourth either at the beginning or the end. So in this case, there's a perfect fourth from A flat minor 7, right? And then it goes up the octatonic scale again. But that A flat minor 7 to D flat is super important. And I'll show you why. I'm going to switch it out for a very similar progression. I'll play it again. Do you hear how that's way more boring? Something doesn't feel as final when I do that. What I did is I replaced the A flat minor 7 chord with a C flat major 7 chord, which would be the relative relation of that A flat minor 7 chord. So instead of 4/7, it's flat 6. So I replaced it with this. You see how they're really similar sounding versus, right? They're just like one little tiny bit of sonority different, right? That's really important to the identity of this chain. But not only does he do this weird skipping at the beginning, but he also resolves it weirdly. What we expect is this. Right? We expect like a stronger resolution, like. Right? That's what we expect, but we don't get that. He goes up a perfect fourth to this sweeter cadence point. Right? He goes up to that sweet cadence point on this A major chord. And that really changes the character of the piece. So remember when I said that the first lament was kind of a dark lament and the second lament was a sweeter, sort of brighter lament, kind of more implying a stronger motion towards that 4/6 chord, making it a little bit brighter. Well, this transition, this sweet transition, is supposed to emphasize this kind of sweeter tone. You know, the intro is so bombastic and so triumphant, but this sweetness comes out of nowhere and helps us transition between the bombastic A section and the very introverted B section. So let me play play both the A section and the B section, you can see how well it transitions. Right? So what I played there was the A section, then I went into the B section. And the B section has such a different character, right? Instead of this strong lament bass line, we get a very stagnant A major pedal section. Isn't that nice? It's like night and day. We have war and we have peace. There's such different characters, and he combines them so well and transitions between elements so well. It's just fantastic writing. So these two chords are interesting. This B7 over A is contrasted with this B minor 7 over A. Right? It's such a beautiful contrast. You have Lydian, and you have the kind of darker, sweeter Ionian sound, right? The Lydian feels so bright that when you hear the Ionian, it feels like really dark by comparison. Right? And then we move on to this section. In the section at the bottom, the D minor to A over C sharp is just 4 to 1 6. I'll play that. Right? You could see that like after the 4 1 6, it turns into all build up. So how does he do this build up at the end? Right? It sort of feels like a major predominant dominant chain, like, right? And then, but it isn't a predominant dominant chain, because D, E, and then E repeats, and then it goes to F. Isn't that weird? Right? It's not a traditional predominant dominant chain. It's sort of like sounds like one. You get the impression that it's supposed to be a predominant dominant chain, but he takes the E and he just repeats it and then treats it like flat 6, and then goes to the next. He goes to flat 7 after that. So he goes 4, 5, and then this becomes flat 6, and then he goes to flat 7. And then flat 7 resolves to 1. And that brings us to the top of the piece. It brings us to the A flat at the very beginning of the piece. And that's how he gets there. So he's basically taking 4, 5, and flat 6, flat 7, and he's kind of eliding them together. He's kind of having two predominant-dominant chains kind of eliding together. It's weird. It's not a very traditional presentation of it, but it's an interesting way to use the material of a predominant-dominant chain and alter it in like a novel way. You see, it's not E major and F sharp at all. It's actually F flat and G flat because they're actually acting in A flat major, right? You have F flat and then you have G flat and then it resolves to A flat, right? So they're flat 6, flat 7 of A flat. So even though it's not 4, 5, 6, 7 in, I guess, in A major, which is the key of the B section, it doesn't matter because it's at least predominant, dominant, predominant, dominant. And that feeling of predominant, dominant, predominant, dominant gives us that forward momentum in order to resolve to that A flat at the top of the form. So that's the logic behind it. So that really leaves us with just understanding the big picture of the piece, right? So at the very beginning of the piece and at the very end of the piece, there's a predominant-dominant chain. We have the... right? And at the very end of the piece, we have the... which is like a variation of a predominant-dominant chain. And then we have, in the middle of the piece, in order to transition between the A section and the B section, another predominant-dominant chain. So the predominant-dominant chains basically are the beginning and end and transitions. Then between those, there's like two other sections. There's a section that's a series of laments. Right? And then the predominant-dominant chain happens. But you can see that that's a series of laments. And then the B section is mainly just like tonic pedal. You can tell that it's just like a big dominant pedal. I can just keep playing that A down there in the bass, right? And then we get a little bit of... and then 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7, 5, and then we hear the chromatic laments again. So this piece is incredibly well structured. You can see that there's only 3 elements in the whole piece. There's predominant-dominant chains, there's chromatic laments, and there's tonic pedals. It's just the concise writing is so impressive, and it is a hallmark of Goichi Nosei's writing. Goichi Nosei is the most experienced and studied composer at Game Freak, and I cannot commend his incredible work enough. There's very few composers who are able to write like he can and even understand his language. It's really unusually amazing writing. It's really unusual for any composer, let alone a Japanese video game composer, to have such a strong grasp on basic compositional principles like this. Now, there's a lesson to be learned here, and that's that you should limit the number of devices that you're using in a piece. Like, once you establish a couple things, that's all you can use for the rest of the piece. You know, if you want to write another piece, you can, but you have to be economical, right? So look at how he restricts himself to just those 3 devices, even though when you initially listen to the piece, it feels like there's a million different things going on, and it feels really complicated, right? It feels like there's more than just 3 things going on. And that's because he's using the material in interesting ways and developing the idea. You know, this is something that a lot of younger composers struggle with, this idea of developing. Well, what does it mean? Well, try taking a piece of music that someone else wrote and change all of the notes. Keep all of the rhythms and change only the notes and make it wonderful. That's a hard thing to do. I mean, it seems like it would be harder than just starting a piece from scratch, and it is, I'll tell you. It's harder than just doing it from nothing. But one thing is you won't get stuck as much because at least you have a model. I mean, as a young composer, you should compose with models. And if you want to write video game music, the best place you should look is video game music and see what other composers of the medium are doing. I think that it would be wonderful if you took from Go Ichinose, one of the premier composers of video games. But that's really it. I want to say I did stop making the Poketunes videos. A lot of them was because I was getting bitter because I didn't want to cover Masuda's music. I don't hate all of Masuda's music. I'm a really big Burn Tower fan. Like Olivine Lighthouse, like all these tracks from Gen 2. There's a couple of them from Gen 2 that I like, but none of them really hold a candle to anything that Ichinose writes. So it's hard to sit there and to talk about music that it just really isn't that interesting. It's much more interesting to talk about, Route 23 from Pokemon Black 2 and White 2. So that's what I did. There will be more Pokemon videos. If you're still interested in my Pokemon videos, subscribe to the channel. I'm never going to stop making them. Maybe eventually I'll do a couple of them at a time, But that remains to be seen. I hope this was interesting. Ichinose's music is really special. And I want to bring attention to him because he's never listed first in the credits. No one ever gives this guy any attention. It's really bizarre. It's bizarre to me. And a lot of it is due to the fact that he's buried in the credits and you can't really tell who's writing the music. Pretty much every good theme from Generation 2, 5. I mean, some of the nice ones from 5 are Shota Kageyama. But, Abandoned Ship is a completely no-name guy. I don't know how he got in there. But I like Abandoned Ship, and that's a wonderful piece. I may do that one someday. But I hope my excitement about this, because I can actually be excited about this music, makes you excited about it, and I hope that you look forward to more Pokemon stuff in the future. Well, that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching. And I'll see you next time on Poketunes, where we talk about Fire Emblem. Okay, see you there. Good evening. Donate to my Ko-Fi. Donate to my Ko-Fi.